Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable John Thune, U.S. Senator.
I've always been a little shy. I've always been the quiet type till now.
Morning. Good morning, Colorado CPAC. It's great to be with you all today. I want to thank the ACU and CPAC for the great job that they do, for you all do, advocating on behalf of our conservative principles. And I think after last night's debate, the only thing that you can come away saying is it's game on, baby. And what I saw last night is what I think a lot of Americans saw. I think probably what all of you saw, and that was a candidate, Mitt Romney, who had answers, and another candidate, President Obama, who made excuses. In fact, it seemed President Obama was a little unhinged without his teleprompter. But what was even more unhinged was watching the left-wing media respond to that last night. I thought some of those folks on MSNBC were going to pop a vein while this was going on. But it really was. It was an extraordinary evening, and it's so important, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you how important Colorado is in this whole debate and what an important role they're going to play in determining who the next president of the United States is. You know, Al just mentioned a lot of the data with regard to this president and his economic record. And if you go through it, it's really pretty stunning. Because on his watch, since he became president, we have seen fuel prices more than double. We've seen health care costs go up by 30%, college tuition go up by 25%. We have watched the national debt go up by 50%, the number of people on food stamps go up by almost 50%. And yet at the same time, we have watched the average incomes in this country go down by about $4,500. And so everything that people spend money on in our economy is going up at the same time that their average earnings are going down. That is the Obama record. That is the Obama economy. And it's punctuated by the fact that just a couple of weeks ago it came out that America now has dropped from first, which is where they were when this president took office in terms of global competitiveness, down to seventh. Down to seventh. And the reason they said that, when you looked at the reasons they stated, it was spending, debt, taxes, regulations, and red tape. All things that are driven by government policies in Washington, D.C. And so if we're going to get this country back on track, we have got to get new leadership in Washington, D.C. Now, I always like to talk about, when I think about what's happening in Washington, D.C., I'm reminded of the story that's told about the guy who wanted to become a locomotive engineer. He wanted to drive trains. And so he went to the place where you get that kind of instruction. And he had an instructor who gave him a problem. He said, if you had a train coming from this direction at 55 miles an hour and another train coming from this direction at 45 miles an hour, what would you do? The guy thought about it for a minute, and he said, well, I think I'd call my brother. And his instructor said, well, that's a really strange answer. Why would you do that? And the guy said, well, because my brother's never seen a really bad train wreck before. Ladies and gentlemen, with this administration and their policies, we are headed for a train wreck unless we get this thing turned around and back on track. And the way to do that is to elect leaders who understand what makes America great. What makes America great are the conservative principles that have stood the test of time. You know, Ronald Reagan once said there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. And when you govern according to a set of principles, and we all know what those are, limited government. We believe profoundly that government ought to have a limited role. You know, you look at, in the 40 years up until 2008, what we were spending on the federal government in this country was about 20% of our GDP. Since President Obama's taken office, that has spiked. We're now spending almost a quarter, 25% of our GDP, just on the federal government. When you add in state and local spending, it's about 41%, which puts us in the neighborhood of some of the European countries. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to end up like those European countries. They've got government that's growing out of control. Well, we also believe that when you govern according to a belief in the free enterprise system and economic freedom, that you get a much better result than if you have a government-centered society. Well, that came out very clearly last night in the debate. Governor Romney believes profoundly that the greatness of this country is in the innovation, the creativity, the entrepreneurship of the American people. President Obama, of course, believes that the way that you make America better is you grow government, make people more dependent upon government. That couldn't have been more crystal clear in that debate last night. But ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand that the greatness of this country and restoring that starts with growing the private economy and creating opportunities and jobs for people, not in the federal government, but where they really create the good-paying jobs, and that's in our private economy with our small business and our entrepreneurs. We believe in a principle of fiscal responsibility, that you can't spend money you don't have. You have to live within your means. Well, we've got a government that's living way outside of its means. And you just heard Al talk about $16 trillion in debt, $50,000 for every man, woman, and child in America today. We have got to get the federal government on a diet if we're going to turn this country around. And that starts with the right kind of leadership, someone who understands what the fiscal responsibility is all about. Governor Romney demonstrated that as governor of Massachusetts by inheriting a deficit when he came into office, leaving with a $3 billion surplus at the same time he was able to reduce taxes 19 separate times. Well, President Obama already has raised taxes 21 times, and I can tell you that in a second term it's Katie bar the door. Because if you're going to pay for all the things that he wants to do, including the $2.5 trillion expansion of health care in this country, it's going to take a whole lot more taxes. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe the American people want to see that. They want to see a federal government that is slimmer, smaller, more efficient, quits wasting their money, and that's what we need, and that's what we're going to get if we elect Mitt Romney as the next president of the United States. The other thing I'll say is that we need to govern according to a basic foundational principle of this country, too. It's part of our heritage, it's part of our history, and that's a belief in individual responsibility. You know, I remember when Ronald Reagan, back when he was governor of California, went to the National Governors Association in 1969, he proposed a concept called welfare reform. It got voted down 49-1. And yet, a little over 25 years later, when the Republicans took control of the Congress, welfare reform was passed, and it transformed this country and put people off of welfare and back to work. It was a remarkable accomplishment. And we have to understand that the greatness of this country isn't found in the institutions in Washington, D.C. It's found when we govern according to a core set of principles and allow these people and the people across this country and job creators to do what they do best. And that's get people back to work, back where there's dignity and self-esteem. Those are the types of things that have made this country great and will restore its greatness if we can get a leader who understands that and is willing to work hard to implement those principles. Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is only always one generation removed from extinction. It can't be passed on in the bloodstream. It has to be fought for and defended and handed down for our children to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children's children what it was once like to live in the United States of America where men were free. This is a seminal moment. We're counting on Colorado. May it never be said of us that we didn't do our part to pass that torch of freedom to the next generation. It starts on November the 6th. Let's do it. Let's go out and elect Mitt Romney president. Let's take back the Senate. Let's hang on to the House of Representatives, and let's turn this country around. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.